The cold steel bit into my wrists. The handcuffs were on too tight. I winced, trying to protest, but the officer shoved me forward.
"Move along,"
he barked, his breath misting in the cold night air. Flashing red and blue lights painted the street in an eerie glow, reflecting off the stoic faces of my neighbours. They watched, whispering, as I was ushered towards the squad car. Falsely accused, wrongfully imprisoned, my nightmare was just beginning. The inside of the squad car was a sensory assault. The dim lighting made it hard to see, but the shadows seemed to move with a life of their own, creating an eerie atmosphere that heightened my anxiety. Stale coffee and disinfectant battled for dominance in the enclosed space. The smell was almost nauseating, a constant reminder of the countless hours this car had seen, the stories it could tell if it could speak. I sat stiffly, my muscles aching from the awkward position of my cuffed hands. The cold metal of the handcuffs bit into my wrists, a physical manifestation of my current predicament. My mind raced, replaying the events that led to this moment. The officer behind the wheel remained silent, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. His stoic demeanour offered no comfort, only adding to the tension that filled the car. I wondered what he was thinking, if he had any sympathy for me, or if I was just another case to him. Every so often a streetlight would flicker past, casting grotesque shadows that danced across the interior. These fleeting moments of light and dark seemed to mirror my own thoughts, alternating between hope and despair. Each tick of the clock seemed to amplify the silence, a heavy blanket of dread settling over me. Time felt distorted, each second stretching into an eternity. The uncertainty of what lay ahead was almost unbearable, a weight pressing down on my chest. I caught a glimpse of the officer's eyes in the rearview mirror. They were intense, focused and unyielding. It was as if he could see right through me, reading my every thought and fear. I quickly looked away, not wanting to meet his gaze. Suddenly the radio crackled to life, breaking the oppressive silence. A voice on the other end spoke in hurried tones, but I couldn't make out the words. The officer responded with a curt nod, his eyes never leaving the road. The brief interruption only served to heighten my anxiety. As we drove through the deserted streets, the loneliness of the journey became more pronounced. The world outside seemed to be asleep, oblivious to the turmoil within the squad car. Each turn and bump in the road felt like a jolt to my already frayed nerves. My fingers gripped the edge of the seat, knuckles turning white from the pressure. It was a small attempt to ground myself, to find some semblance of control in a situation that felt completely out of my hands. The police badge on the officer's chest glinted in the dim light, a stark reminder of the authority and power he held. It was a symbol of control, one that I had lost the moment those handcuffs clicked into place. A single tear rolled down my cheek, a silent expression of the fear and uncertainty that gripped me. I didn't bother to wipe it away. It felt like a small release in the midst of the overwhelming tension. In the distance, the city skyline twinkled with lights, a distant hope that seemed just out of reach. It was a reminder that life continued outside this confined space, that there was a world beyond this long ride. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions within me. The rise and fall of my chest was a small comfort, a reminder that I was still here, still breathing, still fighting to hold on to some semblance of hope. The police station loomed before us, a monolithic structure of cold concrete and steel. It seemed to exude an aura of despair, a feeling amplified by the flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed overhead. I was led through a labyrinth of dilapidated corridors, the air thick with the smell of stale sweat and fear. Each step echoed on the cold, hard floor, the sound bouncing off the walls like the whispers of lost souls. They threw me into a cell, the metal bars clanging shut with a finality that sent shivers down my spine. The sound echoed through the empty corridors, a haunting reminder of my new reality. The cold, unyielding metal seemed to mock my helplessness, each clang resonating with a sense of doom. I could feel the weight of the bars, not just physically but emotionally, as if they were closing in on my very soul. The small concrete room was bare except for a cot and a toilet. The walls, made of rough concrete, were devoid of any colour or life, adding to the oppressive atmosphere. The cot, with its thin, worn-out mattress, offered little comfort. The toilet, a stark reminder of the lack of privacy, stood in the corner, its presence a constant reminder of my confinement. The air was thick, with the scent of dampness and decay, making it hard to breathe. I sat down on the edge of the cot, my heart pounding in my chest. Each beat felt like a drum echoing in the silence of the cell. My mind raced with thoughts of what had led me here, the choices and mistakes that had culminated in this moment. The fear was palpable, a living entity that seemed to wrap itself around me, squeezing tighter with each passing second. I could feel the sweat trickling down my back, a cold reminder of my anxiety. It was then that I heard it, a low growl, deep and guttural, emanating from somewhere beneath the floor. The sound was unlike anything I had ever heard, a primal noise that seemed to vibrate through the very foundation of the cell. It was as if the ground itself was alive, breathing and growling in the darkness. The growl grew louder, more insistent, filling the room with an eerie, almost supernatural presence. I strained to listen, trying to pinpoint its source, but it seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The sound sent a jolt of fear through me, my instinct screaming that something was terribly wrong. My body tensed, every muscle ready to spring into action, though there was nowhere to go. The growl continued, a relentless reminder of the unknown danger lurking beneath me. My mind conjured images of monstrous creatures hidden in the shadows, waiting to strike. The fear was overwhelming, a suffocating blanket that threatened to smother me. I knew I had to stay calm, to think clearly, but the growl made it nearly impossible. It was a sound that spoke to the deepest, most primal parts of my brain, triggering an instinctual response that was hard to ignore. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but the growl persisted, a constant reminder of the peril that lay just beneath the surface. The growl grew louder, shaking the cell bars.
The floor beneath me began to tremble, cracks spider-webbing across its surface.
With a deafening roar, the concrete gave way, and I plummeted into the darkness.
The air rushed past me, a symphony of screams and the grinding of stone.
I braced myself for impact, but it never came.
Instead, I found myself falling through an endless void, the growling sound growing ever closer.
Then, just as suddenly as it began, the fall stopped.
I landed hard on cold, damp ground.
I struggled to my feet, my eyes struggling to adjust to the dim light.
As the shadows shifted, I saw it.
A monstrous creature, its eyes glowing like hot coals in the darkness.
Its skin was a sickly green, stretched taut over a skeletal frame.
Razor-sharp claws dripped with a viscous fluid, and its breath reeked of decay and death.
Fear, pure and primal, gripped me, paralyzing me where I stood. It was as if the very air around me had thickened, making it impossible to move, to breathe. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing like a drum in the silence of the night. The darkness seemed to close in around me, suffocating and oppressive, as if it were a living entity intent on consuming me whole.
The creature let out an ear-splitting roar, a sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the world. It was a roar that spoke of ancient power and unending hunger, a sound that reverberated through the trees and sent shivers down my spine. The misty forest around me seemed to amplify the sound, creating an echo that bounced back and forth, making it impossible to tell where the creature was coming from.
The ground beneath my feet trembled as the roar continued, a low rumble that seemed to come from the very bowels of the earth. The shadows around me danced and flickered as if they were alive, responding to the creature's call. I could feel the vibrations in my bones, a deep, unsettling sensation that made my skin crawl. It was as if the world itself was reacting to the presence of this monstrous being. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. My voice was trapped in my throat, a silent cry that refused to come out. My legs felt like lead, heavy and unresponsive, as if they were no longer a part of my body. I was a prisoner of my own fear, unable to do anything but stand there and wait for whatever was coming. I was frozen in place, trapped in the grip of a terror I had never known. It was a fear that went beyond the rational, a primal instinct that told me I was in the presence of something truly dangerous. The darkness around me seemed to pulse with malevolent energy, a tangible force that pressed down on me from all sides. I could feel my mind starting to fray at the edges, the sheer intensity of the fear threatening to overwhelm me. And as the creature advanced, its glowing eyes fixed on me, I realized with a sickening certainty that this was no nightmare. This was real. The glowing eyes were like twin orbs of fire, burning with an intensity that seemed to pierce through the darkness and into my very soul. Each step it took brought it closer, the ground shaking with its approach. I could see the outline of its massive form, a hulking shadow that blotted out the stars. There was no escape, no waking up from this. I was trapped in a waking nightmare, and the creature was coming for me. I tried to scramble backward, my hands scrabbling for purchase on the slick ground, but it was no use. The creature was upon me in an instant, its claws tearing into my flesh. I cried out in pain, the metallic tang of blood filling my mouth. I could feel its hot, fetid breath on my face, smell the stench of decay emanating from its pores. This was it, I thought. This is how it ends. But instead of delivering the final blow, the creature simply held me there, its eyes boring into mine. I could feel its power, ancient and malevolent, flowing through me. It was a power that spoke of endless darkness, of unspeakable horrors that lay beyond the realm of human comprehension. I closed my eyes, waiting for the inevitable. And then I heard a voice, deep and resonant, echoing through the darkness.
"Welcome," it said, the word dripping with malice. "Your nightmare has only just begun."
My eyes snapped open, and I found myself staring into the creature's face, its eyes glowing brighter than ever. And in that moment, I knew that I was trapped, not just in this subterranean hellhole, but in a nightmare that would follow me for the rest of my days.